All right, welcome to Shmoocon 2009. Before we get into Crispin's talk, I have a couple of announcements. First things first, we have a t-shirt charities. I know many of you have bought a whole bunch of t-shirts. The two charities that we're, all the t-shirt sales this year are for going directly to charity. We're not taking any profit from it. In fact, Shmoocon bought all of the shirts. And all the money that you guys are using to buy t-shirts are going directly to the charities. There are two direct charities right now. There's Hackers for Charity and EFF. If right now we are down to just women's sizes. Valentine's Day just around the corner. For those of you that have forgotten, some of your girlfriends, wives, daughters, something, or if you're a really small guy, maybe you might want to buy some women's t-shirts. That's about all we have left at the moment. Also, the famous crypto museum that's falling down in the UK. Yeah, the Bletchley Park Museum. We have 9 t-shirts. They're a little expensive for charity as well. $50 for the reason that we won World War II, to keep that museum up and running. PGP and IBM have stepped up and donated a ton of money in order to get the charity running. Please, if you have the money, this is the beginning of computer security. Please go there and buy one of those t-shirts. In addition, we've been running a charity raffle for the Covenant House of Washington. I know we all want to do stuff for computer security stuff. Ever so often, it's nice to give back to the community. This is an organization that does food and shelter and clothing and a number of other community service type projects in the Washington, D.C. area. We're doing a number of raffles, a number of items to be raffled off, including a number of notebooks, one of the Google G1 phones, a whole number of different types of shirts, books. Please, the tickets are $5. You do not have to be present to win. On each of the tickets, fill out your contact information, your phone number, your email address. If you win one of the items, we will get in contact with you and make sure that you get it. Again, this is for a very good cause. Please donate. All right, last but not least, Dr. Crispin Cowan. Talking about his first days at Microsoft. You might know Crispin from Immunix, where he made computer security not suck. StatGuard and a number of other security technologies, including things that made SE Linux possible to be in major distros, Crispin was very involved with from the beginning. Very recently, moved to the enemy, now works for Microsoft, making computer security not suck for the user. So before we get too much further, we always have a number of giveaways from our sponsors. O'Reilly's given us a whole number of books for this talk. Mac OS for Unix geeks, because
That's so topical.
Actually it's what I would prefer you to do next, is to go to OS X and fix that. So OS X for security geeks. I can't throw. You want to find somebody to toss it out to? How about Crispin? You should find somebody to give a book to.
I nearly hurt somebody last time.
All right. So
Beating someone with a big book.
please give a warm welcome to Dr. Crispin Cowan.
Thank you. So this talk is trying to give an interesting perspective of, okay, we are on, Microsoft from the Linux guy's perspective, because not a lot of people cross that boundary, at least not in my experience. So this is the why you should care about me, but Kaz already did all that. And what the hell am I doing at Microsoft? Because I've often been a little bit critical of Microsoft. What do you expect when you build a client that auto-executes content in the mail client? And as root. That's a good idea too. So, 2008, I joined Microsoft. What? Is hell open to ski resort or something? Not really. This talk is about my first year at Microsoft. It's really different, but not really different. I talk about three big topics. What? Is it not working? Okay. Three big topics. Comparing the coding security of open source versus Microsoft, comparing the operating system architectures, that's where I really live, and comparing the communities. Everybody cares about the community. So comparing the code security, the open source theory of Microsoft, or theory of security, is many eyes make bugs shallow. Eric Raymond, if everybody looks at the code, then sooner or later somebody will see each bug from some perspective. There's the theory that you can audit and fix your code, because like if someone hands you a binary program and there's a bug in it, you're pretty much stuck. You wait for a patch. If you have the source code, you can fix it. And my theory back in the day was that you can apply security tools like StackGuard or other compiler tools. If you have the source, then you can do something about it. The open source theory of Microsoft is that they're a big evil monopoly that don't have to care. That they care more about features than security. The product's bloated, full of bugs, shiny buttons. And that closed source means that they can hide embarrassingly bad code, and there's squat you can do about it. So the reality of some of this stuff, many eyes make bugs shallow. Yeah, only if the many eyes are looking. A few projects like the Linux kernel, they get lots of inspection. Kernel bugs, they don't live so long. There's lots of people paying attention. But the vast majority of open source projects don't actually get the attention. There's lots of bugs. They last for years. Like the funny example would be the Debian pseudo-random number generator, which, lots of controversy. But that thing was in the distro for 2 years. So much for many eyes. You can apply security tools, but no one does. They take unless you use Gen 2. The reality of Microsoft security is, yes, it did suck until the 2002 memo. That's when Microsoft corporate decided that security actually mattered to their customers and did something about it. They did a lot about it. They halted all coding production for a month and sent every dev to How to Write Secure Code School for a whole month. This cost them something like $200 million in wages for that month of we're not doing any work. They took this thing seriously. Consider Microsoft SQL, which in 2003 was the cause for the Slammer Sapphire worm. This was a really special vulnerability where a single UDP datagram would overflow the server, pwn the box, and cause it to start spamming more of these datagrams out. This is like the AIDS virus of the internet. It's great. 2004, SQL was one of the first products that Microsoft applied their SDL, Software Development Lifecycle process to. And as a result, since 2004, they had 0 bugs in a 0.0 release for over 2 years. In the same time period, MySQL had 12 vulnerabilities. It's like SDL is like taking all that stuff they taught you in college about how to do software engineering correctly and actually doing it. It seems to work. Then there was my Sardonyx project, which was trying to combine the open source methodology of everybody share and enjoy and the Slashdot culture of I'm a karma whore to get people to audit code. Because it's really cute that researchers will play whack-a-mole with code by finding a bug and publishing it and making a big deal out of their exploit. But that doesn't tell you that that product has been reviewed and is safe. It just means they found one. The trick is to get people to actually audit the whole program and say, yep, I've been through it top to bottom, didn't find anything. And Sardonyx had this interesting model of, well, after you've reviewed it, I've reviewed it, and if I can find a bug in code that you've already reviewed, then I get more karma points than you do. And this was all supposed to feed back on people. And the result was lots of arguing about how the feedback loops should work and no actual audits. The only audits that were ever submitted to Sardonyx were audits done by David Wagner's grad students because he made them do it. Seems that it's really hard to get people to audit code unless you pay them to do it. Microsoft pays them a lot to do it. They hire small armies of people to do code review. They actually pay them like piece workers, like tree planters. They get paid by the bug. It's cute. Now that's how to motivate code review. They have both contractors and full-time staff doing this code review of products that are going to ship. They have a notion that they call attack surface, which means any piece of software that's exposed to input that an attacker might provide. If it has an attack surface, it gets mandatory levels of fuzzing before it ships. They have like compute farms of fuzzing machines that pound on their software day and night. They're mining this software for bugs. So how successful is this? IIS 6, IIS 4, well, that kind of sucked. But IIS 6 had 5 exploits in 2003, not a single major one. Apache had 33 exploits in the same time period. This is bug trends of Windows XP versus Vista. XP did not have the SDL applied to it. It was like the shiny, happy, crappy stuff. And Windows Vista had the SDL applied to it. So first year of vulnerabilities, both fixed and unfixed, half. This is the same data numerically. Vista versus XP, 36 vulnerabilities, 17 versus 30. Updates, 9 versus 26 patches. This stuff is working. This is a comparison of Windows versus Red Hat, Ubuntu, and OS X. And this kind of data is quite often very controversial. There's a lot of bullshit factors you can put into this because Windows doesn't include, say, an Office productivity suite, and Red Hat does. So it's not really an apples-to-apples comparison. I'll just cop to that right now. But the thing to notice is that if you want to argue about that kind of thing, okay, you can say that it might be off by a factor of 3 or 4, but this is a factor of 10. The critical bugs in Vista is under 50, and the critical bugs in Red Hat is 350. It's hard to explain that away. Firefox versus Internet Explorer, that's a little more apples to apples. It's a web browser, right? So they're having 1/3 of the bugs. Same thing. Internet Explorer 6, you kind of don't want to use that. 7, getting better. IE 8 has some cool security stuff in it. More trending data, Firefox. So that is my changed impression of coding. A lot of it is from changed practices. Microsoft didn't care about security until they did, and then they hit it hard. Comparing the operating systems, turns out that software architecture is a lot less flexible than, say, hardware. Go look at hardware from the early 90s, the 386 DX or whatever. The hardware we run today has basically nothing to do with it. It shares an instruction set. The operating systems that we use today have to support the same APIs that they did 15 or 20 years ago because there's back-compat legacy poo that people really depend on. So it's really, really hard to fix architectural problems in the operating system. Sure, you could make a really cool operating system that doesn't have all those problems, and then it won't run that big pile of software, and then it's like, oh yeah, BIOS, I remember them. So some problems in the Windows architecture. Heavy reliance on thread injection. This boggled me when I got there. You got 2 applications running on your desktop in Windows, and this one gets to inject threads into that one. Here, run this arbitrary code, please. Thanks. Great. Get back to you. that's not an exploit, that's a feature. And it happens enough that no, turning it off is a non-starting proposal. That's not going to happen. Windows messages, they use them a lot. Millions and millions of them. Very high bandwidth. This is how your desktop talks to itself, so that clicks and drags and clicky things, they all work. And therefore, any access control checks you want to do have to be very, very fast. You don't get to go look on an ACL to decide whether this window gets to mess with that window. It has to be a fast check. Impersonation. There's a capability in the operating system that says that I get to impersonate your identity. And that's not a problem. Last year was a really nice presentation by Cesar Carudo on token kidnapping, where he discovered that some relatively low privilege services in some version of Windows had the impersonation capability and basically bootstrapped his way to administrator through it. So that's kind of a problem. And the big one, massive dependence on administrator privilege. Way back to NT 3.51, and Microsoft chose to port the Win32 environment, i.e. Windows 95, onto NT so that NT would not have the BIOS problem, that you would have a software base for NT. And the problem is that Win32 just assumed that you're an administrator. All the applications assume that you're an administrator. To be able to do anything useful, you have to be an administrator, and so everybody is. Oh, let's make it easy to use. We'll make the default account an administrator. Yeah, that's easy to use. Now you're running your mail client and your web client and your word processor and your PowerPoint thing as root. Great. That's what I want to open strangers' mail with. And 20 years of that, and there's a lot of software that has a dependence on that. Programmers are lazy. I don't blame them for it. I was a lazy programmer too. They will do what comes naturally. They will find the easiest way to get from where they are to where they want to be, and if that skitters across privileged resources and no one told them not to, they do it. Fixing administrator, you could just change it and say, nope, now you're a standard user now. You don't get to be an administrator anymore, and you break all the software. Well, we can't do that. So fixing dependence on administrator is what UAC, which is what I actually work on, is all about. You'll hear a lot of hype in the press about how terrible UAC is and Windows users hate it. A lot of hype. UAC is just sudo. If you're a Unix user, you know what sudo is. UAC, that's what it does. The problem is that the users aren't used to it. It like asks them privileged consent questions when they want to do administrative things, and they get annoyed. Unix users are just accustomed to that. It isn't that UAC is sucking, it's the applications that are violating privilege that suck. Moving Windows to a non-privileged environment, moving the ecosystem with it, is a painful process. If you've been running around barefoot all your life, and someone hands you some hiking boots, you're not going to like them, whether or not we're going to go hike across the parking lot full of glass now. So UAC doesn't suck. The applications it's trying to educate suck. Remember, every time you abuse privilege, God kills a kitten. So how bad does it suck? There's the popular meme that everyone turns UAC off. Well, yeah, we have data. You can opt into the Make Windows Better program, and what that means is that we sanitize the data for personal information so that you're not sending your personal stuff, and it just tells us what you did. We do things like strip the file names out of what you're doing, because, file names like, I would like to acquire yahoo.doc, that would be a bit of a problem. So based on this data, 88% of Vista users don't turn UAC off, so it's mostly on. 12% is a large fraction of people to be turning off a feature, but the vast majority of users still have it turned on. The trend is improving over time. One of the big metrics we use is sessions that are prompt-free, where a session is defined as starting with log on and ending with either log off or 24 hours later. When Vista RTM'd, ready to manufacture, release, 50% of sessions were prompt-free. In Vista SP1, 65% of sessions were prompt-free, and Vista SP1 for enterprises, up to 80% of sessions were prompt-free.
Could that mean that people weren't using their computers for a day because they didn't want to see?
Well, that wouldn't be a session.
Okay, all right.
You know, this is instances of people using it. What that is more and more applications are porting to non-privileged operation, or the users are choosing not to use the applications that don't port. One way or another, they're not running the apps that abuse privilege.
Also, isn't your 88% your general average doesn't know how to turn it off?
Pardon?
Your 88%, isn't that also your general average Windows user doesn't know how to turn it off? They just complain about it?
Could be. Well,
They just click enter and accept everything. I mean, that's the problem is the UHC doesn't solve the problem of bad applications. It just offloads onto the user the requirement to click yes every frigging time you click an application and prompts them.
I know.
It's like bad certificates.
Yeah, I know. A friend of mine said very wisely that when you surface a prompt to the user, that is an unhandled security exception.
Yes.
I know.
What's the statistics about how many users opt into the program to let you know what's going on versus don't? So that 88% is still not a real number.
Well, I don't actually know that number, but and my statistics foo is weak. So if there's an actual statistician here, I'll listen. But what I read on the Wikipedia was that a statistical sample is significant. Approximately, you get a good confidence interval if you have like 1,000 samples, which is why you can poll small towns in New Hampshire of which presidential candidate they're going to vote for. They ask 1,000 people. They do a national poll of who's going to win the election. They ask 1,000 people. You don't need a fixed percentage of the population. You need about 1,000 questions to get a statistically significant sample. It does have to be a random sample, and this Help Microsoft is a self-selected sample. So then you get to inject your favorite bias of whether people who opt into reporting data are going to be more likely to turn on leave UAC on, or less likely. And there's rationalizations for both, and you can't vet them. They're rationalizations because by definition you don't have the data for the other part.
Look for the default setting.
Well, it's default off, otherwise we're shipping spyware. So we don't do that.
But by default, UAC only makes Windows marginally more secure as it trains users not to use the applications that prompt them. All you're doing is moving the ball around on the security.
Correct. The goal is to get people to use a true standard user where there is no UAC. UAC per se is a crude approximation to the standard user environment, which is where you actually get some security benefit. Yeah.
There's I think 15% delta between my words, not yours, consumer grade and enterprise grade. Do you have any explanation for that?
I have rationalizations that I can make up out of my ass, but I don't actually know the answer.
How do you define an enterprise user?
Is the machine domain joined? If the machine is controlled by a domain controller, it's enterprise, and if it's just sitting at home, then it's not. So I'm going to roll on because there's more slides. The Linux architecture has some problems. The Unix architecture per se is pretty sound. X11, not so much. Any desktop app in X can keylog any other desktop app. So you may think you're all secure on your Linux box, but do you realize that any of those cute gadgets that you can install on your desktop can be sniffing your passwords anywhere? There is work going on to harden the X11 architecture so that there might be some access control on which windows can mess with which other windows, but it's not done yet. It's been in process for years, and who knows when it will finish. The core problem is that X is a giant mux. All the applications mux into X, which goes to the keyboard, which is focused on whatever application you want, but it all goes through a single focus point, and that's where the trust issue is. There's interesting economics in malware. If you're selling software, trying to get users to use software, anything where the user has discretion, then being number two is okay. You can get a nice, tidy profit out of being number two. Apple does. But when you're in the malware business, you don't care about number 2. You only care about number 1. Number 2 is just not interesting. So as long as the attackers will attack whatever is number 1. Vista doesn't get significantly attacked because XP is number 1. And when Vista becomes the dominant platform, then the attackers will hit it. If Apple ever becomes the dominant platform, they will find out what security is all about. But right now, people are not bothering to attack Macintosh because there aren't enough of them. So this is a weird economic effect that isn't obvious if you just think about the competitive market of desktops. So the last topic is comparing the communities. The Linux community is an open community of passionate experts. It's open, anyone can join. Passionate, everyone cares about Linux. Experts, everyone is convinced that they're right. Your job is to convince them that you're right. Microsoft, according to open source theory, is a closed garden of clods who can't code for beans, and they only care about money. You can tell by the bloated and Baroque architecture, the mountains of bugs, and the mountains of money. The reality in the Linux community, not so open as you might think. Shockingly hostile to women. It's not overtly that they hate women, it's that the Linux culture, especially the LKML culture, is a very aggressive meritocracy where you have to be willing to shout down other people, where criticism of your well-thought-out proposal is, why don't you get your code out of your ass next time? So failing to, and God help you if you top post. Yeah. As if that was some kind of virtuous meritocracy of how good your design idea is. Oh my God, you didn't follow the Linux format for a post. Then, passion. Anyone who disagrees with your idea will tell you that you don't care about Linux. What they mean is, let's do it my way. Experts. Everyone is an argumentative butthead. The reality in Microsoft, closed garden, well, perhaps, but the garden is 100,000 people. It's a really, really big garden. You can't feel the walls so much because most of the time you're just interacting with a very large community of other people working on the same project. And it's just like Linux, as if they ever looked outside. There are walls, which I kind of bump into because there's stuff I can't talk about. And that wasn't true in Linux. But it's a really big garden, so I don't mind that it's closed. Clods who can't code. Well, no, that's priorities. Programmers deliver what they're told to, or mostly. Before 2002, the priority at Microsoft was clearly features and ship date. Make it shiny and ship it on time. Okay. Between 2002 and 2006, they changed the priorities to features and security. You can tell because Vista was several years late. So now we're trying to balance all three. Balancing is a tricky bit, but it's the usual thing, features, quality, date, pick 2. Trying to pick 3 is hard. Money. Having resources is nice. Windows security is the size of all of SUSE. So we can actually concentrate on things. My changed impression before I got to Microsoft was, Windows security seems to suck. I'll go show them how it's really done. After I get there, I discover that Microsoft is really stuffed with an amazing number of very smart people. It's astonishing. Every good idea I had to suggest not only had been thought of before, it had been tried and failed before. And there's some stupid-ass reason why you can't do it because of some weird arcane bit of app-compat stuff over there. And the real work is coming up with clever ways to break that logjam, which is an interesting problem. It's a challenging intellectual problem, and it has a lot of money riding on it, so I'm having fun. Academic security takes the position that you can't retrofit security. It must be designed in from the start. This is for sissies. Any chump can design a secure operating system from scratch. The trick is to figure out how to retrofit security into an existing base, because almost never do the security nerds get to do the initial design. It's always somebody with a crazy idea, and random economic events cause it to catch on and become the thing. And then they think about security, and then they call us. And You you look at the design, you shake your head, you call people names, and then you get to work trying to fix it. Microsoft has a very bad legacy app compat problem. There's a lot of money riding on it. It's a challenging intellectual problem. It's a stimulating problem. It's a valuable problem. And layoff news notwithstanding, Microsoft is still hiring. Questions, and I'm supposed to pimp the feedback.shmoo.org website, so you get to express your opinion of what you think of me and my talk. Questions? Dude way in the back in the dark there.
Yes, you mentioned that you try to juggle all three items. Some news reports came out recently that for the upcoming 7 release, that they appear to be jump-starting past performance of multiple release candidates and multiple betas and trying to hit a huge deadline. What is your hope that they will be able to accomplish hitting all three in this big endeavor?
The question was, what's up with Microsoft doing fewer beta releases and release candidates? I am definitely not allowed to talk about release dates. I will say that I've been using Win 7 as my personal desktop for over 6 months, and I love it. What? Well, 7's not released. We're pushing people to try 7. And when it will be released, like I said, I can't discuss that. I don't actually know, and I wouldn't be allowed to say anyway. It's a very nice system that's rather consistent with Vista. But that leads me to another thing to point out, is that people who are using XP and found that Vista broke stuff and are hoping that 7 will fix it, no. The broken stuff means we changed app compat for a reason, and 7 perpetuates that. So if you're clinging to your XP stuff, no, it's not going to get fixed. You, sir.
So, what if they said to you one day something like, "We'll grant you one wish, where you can make one change of any size, any cost, no matter what it costs, one major change"? What would it be?
Well, there's too many any's in there. I can come up with quite unreasonable wishes. Like, I wish that they'd program the whole thing in a type-safe operating system and a capability design, and it gets very silly. So I'm not sure what you're getting at.
Well, I mean, amongst the changes that you would like to make that might actually be makeable, implementable, if you could remove, say, if you could somehow magically remove some of the barriers, which change would you like?
Well, what I want is for reasonable desktop security boundaries, so that I can have 2 apps on the same desktop and they are not able to mess with each other. That is very hard in Windows right now, and it's very hard in Linux right now. It's just very hard. And getting there involves closing all the holes without breaking stuff, because you do often have 2 windows on the desktop that need to talk to each other. Okay, so now sometimes you get to talk, sometimes you don't. That's a policy decision, so now you need a policy engine in your Windows communication, and that's very hard. So,
Just wish for no backwards compatibility.
and in fact, I actually wish that nobody solved this problem before I get there, because this is what I like to work on. Sir.
Out of the roughly 5 to 7, depending on who you talk to, different flavors of Vista, there's not one that has everything in it.
Ultimate.
I believe there are actually things missing out of that are addressed in other editions.
Okay, I'm not aware of them. I get free copies at work, and I install Ultimate, and I never run into stuff I don't have. So if there's something missing, it's pretty arcane. Sir.
Yeah, what percentage of the entire population of Microsoft employees and workers actually run non-admin? Do you know?
I do not know.
Is there, I'm sorry, but I mean, just to go drop to 100% so you get good feedback from you.
Sorry?
Are you able to push as a UAC PM inside of Microsoft to force everybody to run non
You can't force non-admin on devs, because if a dev has to recompile the kernel, then he can't be non-admin. If they have access to UAC, they are an admin in the Windows terminology. Admin in Vista and Forward is the same as sudoer in Unix. Sir?
How much would you say that there's a legal problem versus an actual making the code work problem with doing things like, I know that there was an issue with wanting to encrypt the hard drive when Vista first came out. Do you run into that a lot?
Why? Well, I don't understand the question. Like, we do encrypt the hard drive if you turn on BitLocker, and I'm not aware of any issues at all.
A lot of problems that have come along have run into legal trouble because somebody like Symantec says, well, you're taking away our business when you make your software secure.
I can't comment on Microsoft's legal issues with ISVs. I just don't know the facts at all, so it's silly for me to comment anyway. You've been very patient.
The SDL obviously has made enormous progress, but the recent, MSO 867, 09, 001, and 06, 040 all attack an old piece. Maybe I know the answer to this question. Where did they start, and did they leave a bunch of stuff just alone and they didn't have time to do it?
I am the program manager for UAC and isolation, so I don't do that kind of code tracing in detail. I will observe that if you had UAC turned on, then MSO 867 was not a vulnerability. Man.
So, with changing from Microsoft Gina to Microsoft Credential Provider, Microsoft demonstrated that they are willing to say, enough, no more, you have to do it the new way. How much do you think that strategy will be leveraged going forward to eliminate some of the less secure old ways of doing things versus finding ugly hats around them or ways to try to sandbox them?
I'm not privy to that strategy, but observing it reminds me of trout fishing. That you don't want to pull too hard, you'll break the line. And it looks to me like Microsoft uses a measured amount of carrot and stick to get people to move off of really skanky old technology. Sir?
I'll make an observation that when they went from OS 9 to OS 10, Apple did exactly what you said you can't do. So number 2 was able to do that.
Well, yeah, when you don't have any applications, you can do that.
There are a lot of applications that run on 9 that I wish I still had access to. Sorry, I don't agree with that. But I think one thing Microsoft could do would be to, ship an environment that had 2 licenses. Once you could run in a VM, and you could run all those insecure things in a virtual machine where you didn't put any data that you cared anybody hacked, and the other where you ran secure apps that lived up to everybody's security standards.
Yeah, moving to a whole new world and virtualizing the old world is an approach. It's a drastic approach that cuts off a lot of your legacy. With my security architect hat on, I really don't like virtualization as an isolation method. People often propose that if you just run each app in its own VM, then they won't be able to mess with each other. Well, that's cute, but then they won't be able to talk to each other either. And then you have to dig some tunnels so that the apps can talk to each other, and by the time you get through digging the tunnels, then your things are vulnerable again. And even if that worked as well as the proponents thought it did, then, now we're down to network security, and we know that there's never been any problems with that. But in terms of move the whole world to a new way of thinking, you could do that, but Microsoft has so much of an investment in the application base that it's not a very attractive option. It could be someday if fixing Windows doesn't get better fast enough, they might do it, but not right now. Sir?
You often compare UAC to pseudo, but one big difference that I've seen is with UAC there doesn't seem to be a way to whitelist programs that load at boot that contain drivers. Why is that?
You can produce a privileged service that starts at boot.
So I guess the problem is the people who are building the applications that have to be whitelisted need to change this.
if you want, like, we do support like pre-allocated privilege for services, not for desktop apps by design. Anyone else out there? Okay, I can't see you at all. Say something.
My question was just within Microsoft, how organic do you find your code base being? Whereas you take an old project and eventually will morph onto something else and change it. Because that's one of the big pushes of the open source movement, is that these projects can take a big shift and move. Whereas, or if it's necessary, a complete rewrite can be done because there's not really money on the line. So people can start up and rebuild things from scratch. Have some academic security, if you will. Do you find projects within Microsoft that sometimes warrant a whole rewrite, and that Microsoft will go and invest in that? Or is it a lot of just code that eventually just shifts from one thing to another and rebuilds itself back up?
They replace code at various granularities. I'm sure that people rewrite functions from time to time. I'm not a dev, so I don't know. They replace whole components. The difficult to replace thing is APIs. NTLM has been under pressure for some time, and Microsoft has been both, fixing it up to make it suck less, and at the same time pushing Kerberos as a much better protocol. And we have real customers that really depend on NTLM, and they'd be unhappy if we turned it off. If you want better security, Kerber's over here. They use all, there's so much of Microsoft that they use all granularities of replacement.
What exactly is the backwards compatibility requirement? I mean, you have to support any application used by anyone, anywhere, no matter what it is, no matter how it is?
That changes over time. Vista had a somewhat tolerant view of app compat. 7 does not.
The Dark Visitor posted a while back that Gary Kirohan obtained a copy of Windows 7 way back. I was wondering when we can expect our leak.
What? There's been a free public beta all of January. You could download it for free.
Cool. No, they said they actually obtained
Source
source code.
code. I don't know. I've never heard of a leak of Windows 7 source code.
I think it's Dark Visitor.
Okay. It takes a considerable amount of skill just to build Windows from source, so good luck with that. And from what I understand of the fun people have with binary analyzers and debuggers and decompilers, I don't actually care anymore whether you have the source. Thank you very much.